Hey guys, Felwinter's here, bringing you another Destiny 2 build video. In today's video, we're going to be going over the hands-free Warlock. Now, originally this build was created back in Season 12, but it's gotten a few new toys, so we're going to go back over it in today's video. The concept of this build is pretty simple. We're going to be playing Stormcaller, and we're going to be utilizing Arc Souls. Now, Arc Souls got a buff a few seasons ago. These things actually do really good damage, and especially the Sentient Arc Soul provided by our exotic, the Getaway Artists. We're going to be combining that Arc Soul with the Time Soul provided by No Time to Explain. This is going to be our exotic weapon of choice. And with double Arc and Time Souls together, you can actually put your controller down and watch as the two turrets float around you and kill everything in sight. This hands-free nature is going to be amplified by our fragment choice Spark of Instinct, which will send out a chain lightning explosion around us if enemies get too close. But if you want to take a more proactive approach, we do have our special and heavy weapon options open for some really strong arc options that we can levy some really good AoE or single target damage depending on what we need. Throughout this build, we're going to be taking use of the Amplified buff to increase our speed. With the new season, we're going to be able to add damage reduction to Amplified as well as extra super damage from our Chaos Reach. This is going to make Amplified even better when we keep it on, which with this build, we're going to have it on 100% of the time. This is always a great build to have at least one of on a team because it can provide Arc Souls for the entire team to do extra damage to both adds and bosses. So with all that being said, let's get right into the build. Starting with the subclass, of course, we're going to be on Stormcaller. We're going to be using Chaos Reach as our super. For the Rift, we're going to go with Healing Rift just to give us a little bit of extra sustain with the build. For the melee, we're going to go Ball Lightning to give us a bit of extra range. And then for the grenade, we're going to be using the Flashbang Grenade. Now the Flashbang Grenade offers some good crowd control to the build. It also has the shortest cooldown, meaning that we can eat it more often with Getaway Artists to provide those Sentient Arc Souls. For the aspects in this build, we're going to be running the Arc Soul. So this is going to give us the ability to, when we put down a Rift, give not only ourselves, but also our allies Arc Souls. On top of that, it's going to give us cooldown reduction on our Rift whenever we're standing near our teammates. This can be fantastic for refreshing your Arc Soul whenever you use your Getaway Artist to get the Sentient one, or you can just use this as a normal method of getting your Arc Souls in between cooldowns of grenades. Next up, we're going to be running Electrostatic Mine. This is going to generate us Ionic Traces whenever we get kills. Ionic Traces, of course, when we create them, will track towards us and then give us ability energy for all of our on-cooldown abilities when we pick them up. It's also going to allow us to get amplified whenever we pick up an Ionic Trace, which will be generating all the time between this and another fragment. For the fragments, we're going to be using Spark of Instinct. As stated previously, whenever we get critically wounded, we're going to send out an Arc Jolt, chaining to everything around us and making them all jolted simultaneously. This can be great for not only crowd controlling a ton of enemies if you are surrounded, but it can also be used if an Overload champion hits you to stun that champion immediately, giving you some extra needed breathing room. Next up, we're going to be using Spark of Amplitude. This will allow us, when we are amplified, to generate extra orbs of power whenever we get kills. Because we're going to be amplified 100% of the time, this means that we're going to be generating a ton of extra orbs for not only ourselves, but our teammates as well. Next up, we're going to be running Spark of Discharge. This will allow us to, whenever we get an Arc Weapon Final Blow, to generate an Ionic Trace. And finally, we're going to be running Spark of Ions to double up on that Ionic Trace generation. So this way, whenever we kill a jolted target, it's going to spawn an Ionic Trace. Now, this can be either through our special weapon of choice, which we'll get to in a minute, or this can be from Spark of Instinct to get that jolt effect on targets. Also, just in case, if we need more jolt effects to deal with Overload champions, I would recommend swapping out the Spark of Ions for Spark of Shock to make sure our Flashbang Grenade also jolts targets. Flashbangs already have the extra intrinsic benefit of being able to stun unstoppable champions, but now they'll be able to stun Overload champions as well if you use Spark of Shock instead. For our stat priority, we obviously want 100 Resilience and 100 Discipline for this build. 100 Resilience obviously to give us that damage reduction, and then 100 Discipline so that way we have the lowest possible cooldown on our Flashbang Grenade. This means we can eat more grenades and throw more grenades to get that utility in play faster. The last thing that we're going to want is as much recovery as humanly possible. This is going to give us a shorter cooldown on our rifts, which we can use to extend the duration of our Sentient Arc Souls and also give those Arc Souls to our teammates, and it will give us a little bit more healing, which this build is sorely needing. For our armor mods, starting with the helmet, we're going to want to run one copy of Kinetic Siphon, one copy of Heavy Ammo Finder, and then your choice of one copy of Heavy Ammo Scout or Arc Siphon. Now this is going to depend solely on your energy weapon of choice, whether you want to do single target or add clear damage. For the add clear, you obviously want the Arc Siphon to generate you extra orbs, but if you do want a single target option, then I recommend going for that heavy ammo scout so you can provide extra heavy ammo for your teammates, because we are going to be crutching an exotic primary for most of our killing potential. And then the kinetic siphon is just to generate those orbs. Now remember, we are running Spark of Amplitude, which means that we're going to be generating a lot of orbs regardless, but this will let us double up on our orb generation, meaning that we're going to be even more valuable to all our teammates. Moving on to the gloves, these are our exotics, of course, the Getaway Artists. Now the way these work is very simple. You consume your grenade, and that will give you the Sentient Arc Soul buff for 20 seconds. This Arc Soul is built different. It fires chunky damage really quickly at any target within range, and you want to keep this thing up as often as you can. The best way to do it is to consume that grenade initially, and then after that, pop your Rift at about 2 seconds to extend the duration of the Sentient Arc Soul as much as humanly possible. Every time the Sentient Arc Soul damages something, you get massive grenade cooldown reduction that you want to keep up 100% of the time, so that way you can get more flashbangs off to CC more adds and stun more champions. As for the mods on the gloves, you want to run 1 copy of Arc Loader, 1 copy of Kinetic Loader, and 1 copy of Firepower. So this is going to allow us to get extra orb generation on our flashbang grenade kills, and then it's also going to let us reload our exotic primary weapon and also our special and heavy weapon more quickly. For the chest piece, as usual, customize your resistance accordingly. I like 1 solar, 1 void, and 1 concussive dampener as my standard options for resists, but again, focus on any threats or any enemy damage types that you're seeing a lot of in the content that you're doing, and tailor your resists accordingly. For the boots, I'd recommend 2 arc surges to increase our arc weapon damage by 17%. This is going to be good for both our special and our heavy weapon. And then 1 copy of recuperation. This is going to be our primary source of healing in the build. We're going to be generating a ton of orbs with this build, and every time we pick one of those up, we're going to get a chunky heal. Finally, on the bond, I would recommend running 1 copy of Time Dilation, 1 copy of Font of Restoration, and 1 copy of Bomber. The Time Dilation is of course going to extend our Surge and Font effects. Font of Restoration is going to give us that extra 30 recovery, pushing us closer to 100. And then Bomber is going to allow us, whenever we pop that Rift, which we're going to be popping on cooldown to make sure our teammates and ourselves have our Arc Souls refreshed, means that every time we pop that, we're going to get a little bit of extra grenade energy, which means more flashbangs to throw for more crowd controlling effects. The namesake of the build is going to be No Time to Explain. This gun, of course, gives you a Time Soul whenever you land 10 precision hits. This also, as you get crits, you will feed the magazine back, so you don't even need to reload if you can just keep landing crits over and over and over again. And that will also extend the duration of the Time Soul once it is out. Once the Time Soul and the Arc Soul are out simultaneously, you have a lot of automatic damage just going out without you needing to worry about it. The Time Soul actually has more range than the Arc Soul, and that means that they can actually target different things and get multiple enemies low all at the same time. They will focus whatever you're shooting if they can and it's within range, but if not, they can actually separate. Sometimes the Arc Soul will even shoot things behind you. You want to maintain the Time Soul as much as humanly possible. This is for most content. Now, if we need specific champion utility, our grenade and special weapon can deal with Unstoppable and Overload. So if we need an anti-barrier weapon, I would recommend the Wish Ender Exotic Bow. This thing does chunky damage and is a fantastic weapon for this build if you need anti-barrier capabilities, or if you would like extra Unstoppable or Overload capabilities, switch up your exotic primary accordingly to what mods are available in that season to give you those champion capabilities. For our special weapon, we have the brand new Iterative Loop Legendary Fusion Rifle. This is found on Neo Muna after doing just a god-awful amount of those gold patrols, man. They really need to look at that. But this is the first arc fusion rifle with Volt Shot, and it is a fantastic weapon. You get a kill on a low tier ad, and then immediately afterwards you follow that up with the Volt Shot shot on any major, and you can just start bursting it down, watching chain lightning ripple off of it and hitting everything in the area. This is a fantastic weapon. Getting that Volt Shot onto a high health target is going to be one of the quickest ways to burst it down. It is one of the best special weapons for that single target burst, but it also gets the AoE effects if you can set up the situation correctly. Also, if you just need pure AoE and nothing else, Forbearance is still going to be the play here. A chain reaction waveframe GL is a fantastic option. It also offers some healing if you do need it. For our heavy weapon, we have the currently best legendary heavy in the game, which is Hothead. This rocket has plenty of good perks on it. Auto-loading, tracking, clown cartridge, demo, Vorpal, explosive light, it has it all. go to Zavala, buy extra copies until you have the roll that you need for the build. If you need a precision heavy, then obviously Storm Chaser from Duality is going to be your best bet. It gets really good rolls like Clown Cartridge or Rapid Hit combined with Vorpal or Firing Line. And then if you need a sword, currently the best arc sword in the game is Bequest from DSC. I don't quite have the pattern for that one yet, but that is what I'm going for just to complete out this build for any bosses that require a sword. What we want to do with this build is obviously maintain our buffs. We want to run in with our Getaway Artist, eat the grenade, that's going to give us our Amplified, and it's also going to give us our Sentient Arc Soul. We want to use that to get as many kills as possible, to charge up our No Time to Explain, to get our Time Soul active, so that way we have both souls shooting at the exact same time. We want to manage our Rift placements to extend the duration of our Sentient Arc Soul, to give our teammates those Arc Souls as well. We can also consume the grenade to continue the Arc Soul buff and then re-amplify ourselves. We want to make Ionic Traces as quickly as possible. That's going to keep the Amplified rolling the entire time. As I said at the beginning of the video, the new Artifact mod is actually going to give us more buffs while we're amplified, including damage reduction and then also more super energy. So we can use Chaos Reach to melt major champion or boss targets very, very quickly. And then from there, it is just generate as many orbs, as much heavy ammo for your teammates, as much everything as you can possibly do. As I said, this build is one of the few in the game that actually has diminishing returns. You only really want one person doing this, so that way he can supply the entire raid with Arc Souls, whereas everyone else should be on well. This is a really good build if, for example, you have 2 wells already, and you need just a 3rd Warlock doing something else. This can be a very effective build for that if the boss can be damaged by the Arc Souls, because they just give free extra damage to your entire team. This is just a super fun build. It's quite versatile. It has a lot going for it. The one thing that it is lacking is consistent healing. We are crutching recuperation and orb generation to get us that healing as much as possible. Still, with all that in mind, I think this is a super versatile build and really fun to play. I would definitely give it a shot if you have all the pieces to put together. With that in mind, I think that's going to wrap it up for me here. If you enjoyed this video, let me know down in the comments below. With all that being said, this is going to be Felwinter signing out, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.